it's Jeannie, and today I'm creating a flip card using Penguin Palace Get Well Soon stamp set with the coordinating dies. This is a brand new stamp company, and they are actually offering 20% off the entire store for their grand opening, so you should check it out. For today's project, I am starting with Canson XL watercolor paper, and I'll be using Zig Clean Color brush markers for this background that I'm creating. So I grab all the different shades of blue from the set, and I am literally scribbling lines on this background. I make them a little bit of wavy so it mimics the ocean, but there is no rhyme or reason to it. Using a water brush, I'll go ahead and blend out these lines so they don't look super harsh. I do this twice where I go ahead and heat set this so I can add that second layer. You wouldn't be able to add a second layer while it's wet, but if you dry it in between or wait for it to dry, you can add a second layer to intensify the color. And I could have done this a couple of times, but I decided that two was enough. I just really wanted a light blue oceany background for this. I had actually gone into this card not knowing what to do with this. One of these backgrounds is used for the card, and it's only a small portion of it actually. So as you can see, I'm still blending out these colors. They blend out nicely, and I'm not too worried about the harsh lines. While I heat set this a second time, I decided that I wanted to use Hero Art's shimmer spray, and I spray it. You can't really see, but I will show you the shimmer. So once everything is dry, I will remove the painter's tape, and as you can see, it has a really subtle but pretty shimmer to this, and since mermaids are magical, it has to go with glitter. I go ahead and stamp out the images from the stamp set. This is one of their smaller sets, so I'm using the two mermaids. One is sick and one is healthy, and I also use the water bubbles that have two water bubbles and two hearts. It's super cute. So I'm stamping this on white cardstock using Memento Tuxedo black ink. So I will go ahead and color these images, and since they are pretty small, I am not putting too much shading into the body and the skin. I do add a bit of shading to the hair because I wanted it to look like it was flowing in the water, and I do use 4 different Copics to create this effect. And I think it looks really pretty in the end. And I've been working on my coloring, so I think it's getting a little bit better. And of course, you can always improve, but it just takes a bit of time to get Copics down or any alcohol markers because I do use Spectrum Noir markers too, and they work more or less the same way. So for all the colors that I am using, I will have them listed down below. And as you can see, the colors really develop, and it looks like a hot mess at the beginning, but in the end, it looks pretty cool with the highlights and the little shaded areas of her hair. And I think that the blonde hair kind of turns into a dirty blonde, almost brunette kind of color, and I really like it. So you'll notice that the hearts on the side are ones that I do not end up using. I end up stamping them again because I tried for like an ombre purple to pink kind of deal and it just didn't look right. So I just colored them in blue. I'm using those coordinating dies to cut these 3 images out. For this flip card, I did need double-sided colored paper. I have these paper packs from Michaels, and they work really well because they come in all different shades of like a particular color. In this instance, I used the blue paper pack, and this color worked perfectly for it. So for the flip card, I trimmed down a piece of 4¼ by 12 piece of paper, and I am marking it off in the middle. I end up trimming this down so it is an A2 size card, but for now, I'm just using the whole card because I didn't want to deal with getting the measurements perfect. So I make a mark in the middle of the card at 5½, and I make a second mark about an inch out from that middle area. I'm using a rectangle die for this flip card. And those lines that I'm making with my pencil are basically telling me where to cut the die cut. So in between that inch in the middle, I'm not die cutting that portion. So for my die cutting, I will place the plate right where the line is and only run it through for that. So I'll only die cut part of that rectangle. And I'll flip it over and do the same, leaving a 1 inch mark in between those two lines so that portion isn't die cut at all. And this is just a partial die cut technique that I use from time to time. So once I have that die cut, I will go ahead and use my paper trimmer to score the lines that I had previously marked. And this will create my flip card. So I'll fold it back and I'll also go back to erase those lines. And it actually kind of removed the paper color a little bit, but we'll fix that with a little texture that we'll add to the card. So I'm just reinforcing those score lines using my Teflon bone folder, and it creates that fold. So sometimes I work without measurements, and so this makes it a little bit hard to give you this information, but I line it up so the rectangle is in the middle of 5.5, and I just eye it and trim it down. So I trim down one side and then I'll measure at 5.5, so this will fit into an A2 envelope. So I'm grabbing a smaller rectangle die for that and die cutting the watercolor paper that I had previously created. And this one will go in the front of that rectangle area and one will go in the back. Because there was the healthy mermaid and the sick mermaid, I wanted the sick mermaid on the outside, and when you flipped open the card, you'll see the healthy mermaid. And I think that you kind of have to use these two images together because you don't want to add just a card with the sick mermaid. I mean, you can if that's your thing, but I really wanted to tell the story that the sick mermaid got better, um, and we're sending her well wishes. So I wanted to add a little bit more interest to the card itself because it's just a plain piece of double-sided colored cardstock. So I decided to use a stencil from My Favorite Things. It's the wave stencil, and I'm masking off that rectangle area so the heat embossing doesn't get on it. So I'll go ahead and tape that down. I'm doing 1/2 at a time because that stencil is 6 by 6 and this card is 5.5, but it's longer because of the folding. So I'll go ahead and place that stencil down, add Versamark ink on there, and I'm using satin pearl embossing powder to this because I was debating between clear or this color, and I think it's just really pretty because it picks up the color behind it and adds a bit of a satin finish, and I really liked how it looked. So I'll go ahead and do the same thing, and I'm masking off that rectangle portion, and I'm going to line up the stencil so it flows continuously with the the card. So I sped that part up because you didn't really need to see me masking this stuff off. And I think that this just adds the texture it needs because it was just a plain piece of blue paper originally, and I thought that it was a little too plain since the image is only in the middle and the image is so small that I needed to add something extra. I go ahead and adhere the two rectangles to the flip card. So for the front, again, I'm putting the sick mermaid. And then for the back, I'll be putting the healthy mermaid. I spent all that time on the background and I had two pieces of that A2 paper, but don't worry, I'll save it for another time and use it for a different card. I was able to cut the two rectangles from one of the card panels that I had created, so it worked out perfectly. To adhere, I'm just using Tombow monomotic glue, and it's just easy to adhere. I also wanted to stamp out some sentiments. I stamped out two of the three first, and that larger sentiment has lots of well wishes on it, but it ended up being too large to be hidden behind the card. So I actually go back and end up stamping the other sentiment that's in there so I can add it to the card. And I'm just using my paper trimmer to trim this down as close as possible because I actually didn't have too much workspace on the paper to add the sentiments. Just stamped it on white cardstock, and I decided that it looked a little weird against the blue. So in the end, I'll actually add black cardstock to mat it, and I think it really helps make it pop a little bit more. So here I realized that the sentiment's too large. I wanted it hidden behind that rectangle. So I'm taking the smaller sentiment included in the stamp set and stamping it out and trimming it down. And I really like that this stamp set, even though it's small, it includes sentiments that you can use for the inside of the card, and also two images that come along with it. There's also another rose image that is in the stamp set, but I just didn't use it for this card. So I'm just adding score tape to the back of the sentiments on black cardstock, and I'll just trim it down so it leaves a little bit of a black border, so it helps the sentiment pop on the card. And I don't know if you agree, but I think it looks a lot better against the blue instead of just having the white alone. So I'll just go and add score tape to both the sentiment and the little well wishes inside. And it hides right behind the rectangle when you have the card closed. And that really makes me happy because I always like to kind of surprise the recipient and give them something unexpected. So for this card, I realize that there's no space to write anything. And if you're sending a get well card, you usually want to write something. So I just trimmed down a 6 by 4 1/4 piece of paper and fold it in half and adhere it to the card. And you only adhere it to the portion of the back that where the card opens. And this works out perfectly for the card. And that is my card for today. I had a lot of struggles with coming to this card idea, but I think that in the end it works out well. It works well with the sentiment and the stamp set in general because I just didn't want to have only a sick mermaid on my card. I wanted to showcase the healthy mermaid as well. So I hope you like this video and you check out some of these stamps. They're really cute. Have a great day and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.